You looking for a vacation? Maybe somewhere off the beaten path that you haven't thought of? Consider Mississippi. Visit Mississippi.org. So much going on down there. The coast, they have great seafood, of course, then some fabulous golf in Mississippi. And just the culture in general is fantastic. I promise you won't be disappointed. Check them out. Visit Mississippi.org. Was it pass interference at the end of the game that led to the winning score in the Super Bowl? And how good is Cooper Kupp? How do we do on our bets in the Super Bowl? And Danny and Coach, they've got some beef to settle. And did you see the wonderful madness at the WM Phoenix Open? Beers were flying, aces were made. It was spectacular golf. PGA Tour is in Los Angeles at one of the most storied venues this week, Riviera. And the markets, well, they are absolutely all over the place. But don't worry about it, because we're going to get you straight. We're going to give you all the knowledge that you need to handle the markets, to handle the golf, and maybe look ahead even to next year's Super Bowl picks, because that's what we do here on Breaking Even. Welcome to Breaking Even. Usual suspects, Guy Adami, the coach, and Danny Moses. And before we go anywhere, before we even begin talking about the Super Bowl and bets, Danny and the coach, well, they had a little bit of a beef, and they're still trying to figure it out. Here's a little clip from last week's show.
I think sometimes there are certain athletes that are just born to be special. And I think that, what was it, 40 years ago, guys, that Joe Cool was the guy in New York City, that Joe Namath was the guy. We've got a new Joe Cool, and his name is Joe Burrow. And he won the Heisman Trophy. He won the national championship. And now he's going to win his first Super Bowl in year number 2, 28-24. Won't even need the 4 points. And I will cash the ticket. I'll collect from Danny, which will be the first of many, many times I do that on this show.
Coach, I was with you. I totally was with you. I thought Burrow, especially coming down the stretch in the last couple of minutes, was going to get it done. But Danny, in the end, it wasn't Joe Burrow hoisting the trophy. And it wasn't Coach hoisting the money either, was it, Danny?
Well, I think we both won because, listen, I made the bet a couple weeks ago with Coach. I took the Rams before the championship game started at 2-1, which that's just pure winning both games, right? And Coach was willing to take the other side. Then we doubled that up again. He made fun of me, but it was plus 175 for him. That line closed at minus 220, plus 180. So I looked good making the bet when I did. Still made fun. He did win tails, however. He won the thing that has nothing to do with anything, which I had tails, he had heads, so he wins that. So net, I win $200, but winning $1 from Coach is the same as winning $1 million. So no matter what it is, I'm never going to spend it. I'm just going to hold it and have him sign it. So. But I did give you my Venmo, Coach, a couple of days ago. I'm just curious, is it not working or?
Well, no, because you sent it on Twitter, and I don't follow you on Twitter. I'm going to follow Guy, and I'll follow Dan. But you, first and foremost, because I'm a competitor and I'm an athlete, tip of the cap, respect to you for beating me. That being said, if you would have doubled or nothing that bet, which you didn't, you would have had the 400. Then I would have paid you 300, and you're the money guy on the show. You and Guy, and I still got one over on you.
Wait, so, Coach lost, but somehow he's twisting it into
Coach,
he
you
won?
never would have taken 2-1 again on another bet.
100% I would have. About? Absolutely I would have. You said, hey, let's double it up. Okay, I would have. But it's okay. Ned, this is what I do. But I did lose. But as Danny was trying to say, I bet way more than that on Bengals +4. So it's almost like I'm giving it to charity because I won a lot more than what I owe Danny. So, Danny, you are now my charity. You're welcome.
Wow.
You're welcome.
Wow,
Danny,
appreciate that. Yeah.
I mean, it's nice to be a charity, right? I mean, you got money in your pocket.
No, it is. And listen, he knows as well as I do, if OBJ doesn't go down, I don't think that game's close. And so
Not close.
Thank you.
Not close.
So,
yep,
and unfortunately on my OBJ bets, when I started out, I thought he was going to be MVP for sure. I'm glad that Kupp got it. But I ended up okay on the game. I had bought it down to -3 when the line opened originally, like 3.5, 4 at -140. So I came out okay there. But the one that killed me was the halftime. I mean, the missed extra point's just a killer. And you know, it's just crazy, Coach, how the total's 23.5 and the line's 3 and the thing lands on 13-10 on a missed extra point. It really is just like they know something. It's like that was something.
I thought you were taking the under.
Bets.
I thought you were taking the under on the first quarter and the first half.
I took the under in the first quarter and pushed it because it was 10 for me. That should have hit also. They got that bomb to chase and then the late field goal they threw 3 times. If they just run one time, the clock runs out 7-0.
I love
Coach,
go on and on.
Coach, I got a gambler question for you. This is interesting. I've always wondered this. So 23-20s, you have the Bengals plus the points, but you also want the Bengals to win. But you know that if they kick a field goal there, tie score, we're going to overtime, and then you can lose on a Rams touchdown. What are you rooting for there? Are you rooting for exactly what happened at the end of that game? I've always been fascinated by that.
I'm glad you asked me that question because we actually had a live watch party for my show, The Early Edge, CBS Sports Line. So we were on the air live for the entire game, and we actually broached that question because we had so many bets. But at that point, Guy, when you get to the end of the game, you just want the bet that's going to win you the most. And when I had the Bengals plus the 4, and then I had the bet with Danny opposite that, there was no way that I wanted the Bengals to tie the game there and then have the potential for the Rams to score a touchdown in overtime, win by 6, then I lose everything. So, yeah, absolutely.
Guy, I'll add to that. You think about all these bets go on in people's heads. The over-under was 48.5.
Yep.
So if you have the under, and you have the Bengals, you're like, I don't want the Bengals to kick this because you're guaranteed to go over 48.5. If they go to 23-23, game can end in a tie. So at a minimum, barring a safety, it's 49 points. And so there's so many things going on in people's head at that moment.
And that's why, I'm sorry, Ned, that's why they need to do a separate gambling stream for the Super Bowl. They do everything for the national championship, but yet the Super Bowl, because this could be talked about live on the air instead of Al Michaels or Chris Collinsworth maybe alluding to there's part of the people who just say what it is. Sorry, Ned.
Coach, we know a guy who could actually host that coverage, the gambling coverage. There he is.
Where is he?
Hey, Guy, you gave some wonderful knowledge that everybody just kind of fluffed off last week, but it was about the under. And I think you said something, I'm paraphrasing here, but something along the lines of always take the under because you're winning until you're not. And wouldn't you know?
Yep.
Prophetic from Guy
That is
Adami.
the worst advice I've ever heard in the history of gambling.
It is ridiculous, but you know what I'm talking about. At least you feel like you're a winner. You're a winner until you're a loser. And, Coach, you said something else, and I got to tell you something. When OBJ went down, I'm like, there's absolutely no way because now the Bengals are going to lock in on Kupp. If he catches one more ball this game, it'll be a miracle. Meanwhile, I think you said he's going to catch 8 passes. He's going to have a huge game. You couldn't have been more spot on, but I got to tell you something. At halftime, you probably weren't loving that.
No, because his number was over 8.5, and then his median number for his yardage all year was crazy, and people kept betting the unders. He can't keep going 105, 106, 107. He actually won the Super Bowl MVP, Guy, by not getting to his receiving number, but that last drive and that last touchdown was worthy of being the Super Bowl MVP. That's why he had 4 or 5 catches late in the game to get his numbers up there. But certainly they bracketed him for most of the second and third quarter, and then they just figured it out. And sometimes guys are better on offense than guys are on defense, and I think that's what happened ultimately at the end of the game.
Let's check a couple of the bets that we talked about last week. Danny, I think you took Mixon with receptions 3.5 on the over. How'd you do?
Good. He had 5 catches for like -6 yards, but he did get the 5th catch. But it actually went to court. They did do some dump passes because the line started to get to him a little bit, so they needed like a quick outlet. So I hit that, but I also had him on yards. I didn't get that, so I split those two basically, and then all the Odell bets I lost.
Yeah, same. That was unfortunate.
Oh,
he lost himself. That injury. Have we seen what injury? Do we have any news yet?
Torn ACL.
Yeah.
Torn ACL.
In a contract year. That's big.
We like to educate and entertain here when it comes to betting and also finance, and that's a great betting learning point. When you're betting props, don't bet full units because so many things can happen, and that is one of the things that can happen. Props, bet less because there's more of a variance that you could have something happen for it not to come in.
There's so many similarities between this betting mentality in the markets, and we've talked about it. We will continue to do so. One of the exclusives, Coach, that you gave us, Jamar Chase, 28.5 yards on a reception. What was his longest? Do we know?
He had a 50-yard catch, so we cashed that one.
So that's a dinger. One of the exclusives hit, and Danny with one of his hit as well. We got the first half under. We got the first quarter under. McPherson, 1.5 field goals.
That cashed. You're welcome.
Again, and I remember you saying, Coach, You can take that one to the bank. That's a no-brainer.
Yep. You're welcome.
Overall, it was, I would say you hit pretty well, except for Danny Moses walks away with your money.
Retainer. If I had your situation, we currently would have like $200 in my pocket right now. Retainer.
Ned, yeah. I'm just a quick question. This brand of breaking even, it's just getting started, right?
just getting started.
I want to make sure that producer Jacob takes that clip, the last 5 seconds, out of the show, because in 6 months, I want to bring that back.
Fair. We'll just duplicate it.
Can you pay him in some type of foreign bullion or maybe some cryptocurrency that nobody knows about?
On my other show that I do, Early Edge Sportsline, follow us. We actually pay Venmo in real time, and then we show it on the screen to prove that we paid our bets. But
okay, well,
he doesn't want.
We got a few minutes left in the show.
But I don't have his Venmo. He sent it on social media. I don't follow him.
No, I sent it on a message. I would never put it on social media.
Oh, I don't. I blocked your number. I blocked your number too.
Okay, very
Guy
good.
Adami,
very mature.
We're looking ahead to next year's Super Bowl. Lines are kind of already out for who's going to win. The coach is maybe giving the nod to the Chiefs. I'm curious how your New York Giants, you feeling about them getting to the Super Bowl?
Yeah, I think they're 800 to 1. I think they're the 4th highest odds out there. But I think, Coach, you might be with me on this one, and I know Danny hates this guy. I think Daniel Jones can play. We've had that conversation before. I also think at 5 and 7, you can come up with, in my opinion, I think Evan Neal drops to you at 5, and I'll take the center out of Iowa, Linderbaum, at 7, and then I have the makings of potentially one of the top 3 offensive lines in the game with Thomas and maybe getting Shane Lemieux back. So as bad as the Giants were, what we learned from the Bengals is, you know what? You're never that far away going from obscurity to playing in the playoffs. So I'm not saying the Giants go into the Super Bowl this year, but I don't think they're going to be nearly as shitty as they were last year.
There they are. Plus 10,000, guy. Plus 10,000. Solid.
It's a good bet. Go ahead and make it. Speaking of plus 10,000, Coach and Danny, you both had a ridiculous bet that was made. I want to start with Danny because yours was from your mom.
My mom called me the morning. She goes, I need some action, just so everyone's clear where this is genetic. My parents took me to Las Vegas when I was 7 years old into the Hilton and threw me in the youth hotel for 3 days so they could gamble. So I've been exposed to gambling for a long time.
That explains everything.
My first game, hold on. My first game on Atari wasn't Asteroids. It was Casino. And you had to use the other joystick, the roller one. So I had to, okay, just so we're all clear on my background here. So my mom calls me. She's alone in New York City. It's snowing. She says, hey, listen, I want some action on this game. I go, what do you like? She goes, I like that little guy to be MVP. I go, Cooper Kupp? She goes, yeah. I'm like, don't do that. OBJ is going to be MVP. She's like, okay. She goes, but these numbers are popping into my head. I go, what? She goes, I got this number 23 and 20 in my head. And is there a score? Can you do something like that? I'm like, well, yeah, you can throw money away if you want to do something. I'm happy to put it in for you. So I go, you want Rams 23, 20 over Bengals? She goes, yep. I said, okay. I put it in for her. She Venmo'd me the money first because she wants to make it official. 66 to 1 on $50. I have a copy of the ticket. It paid $3,300. So she calls me I actually texted her with 11 minutes left. I'm like, this is going to hit. When I realized the Bengals stopped moving the ball and when it was still 20 to 16, and I just thought the Rams would figure out a way. Given that, and she was smart enough to know in the first half when I got murdered on that missed extra point for the first half bet, she actually texted me. She goes, this might help me later. So she knew what she was doing anyway. So she hits the thing. She's screaming. She's praising Cooper Kupp, everything. And I Venmo'd her the $3,300 right after the game ended. So
you didn't wait a second. You didn't take a chop out of that?
I didn't do it myself. I honestly am such a moron. I have 77 bets I think I had up on my screen. I'm like, yeah, I did 27-20. I did 31-17, 31-13. Those are my 3. And she just did 23 to 20 and hit it. It was unbelievable.
Hey, when your mom has numbers in her head next time, when it comes to the lottery or something, would you mind just sharing them here on Breaking Even?
I mean, she might have the same on a baseball game, but yeah, we'll see. But yes, I will certainly
Coach,
share those. All right, Coach.
You had a similar experience, right?
Well, similar, but it also brings very quickly to light that I may or may not be getting a call from Danny's mother. And I'm going to tell you why.
Easy, no mom jokes. The 200's enough.
There's no mom jokes here.
Right.
This is all serious business.
Okay.
Serious business.
Right.
So one of my prop gurus on the Early Edge, his name is Prop Stars. At the end of the game, he had his phone like this, and he wasn't paying attention. I told you we're having a live watch party. And I was like, why isn't he paying attention? I'm asking him questions. He also had the final score 23-20. So he was literally watching in real time with a plus 10,000 ticket to have the correct score. Yeah. So 100-1. So it begs the question, what book is Danny using that it was only 66-1 and my guy had 100-1, which is why I think Danny's mom might be calling me today and say, listen, is my son screwing me over?
Right.
That's all I'm saying. That's
$1,700. She's missed out on $1,700.
There's the cut, funny. Guy. There's the cut right there. He gave his mom the wrong odds.
It's so good. And I've listened to this now for the last 15 minutes, and I've come to the realization that you should create a Coach coin on the blockchain, and that would solve all the problems we just talked about.
Great idea.
And then you could pay Danny in Coach coin.
It's a great idea.
Do that.
There you go. Hey, before we get on, I want to talk just a quick minute about golf before we get there, and then on to the markets. The markets are all over the joint. Absolutely just impossible to understand right now from those of us who are trying to learn. We're going to lean into Guy and Danny. Quickly, though, what'd you make of this pass interference call at the end of the game for the Rams? Was it a makeup call? Was it pass interference?
Are you asking me?
Anybody. Guy, what'd you think?
No, I thought it was a lousy call. I mean, they kept the flags in their pockets all game. I thought they did a great job of not calling ticky-tack stuff. And then they throw a flag on a play that maybe they throw it in the regular season, but they clearly weren't throwing it during the game. And, you know, in the back of my mind, I'm saying that's a makeup call for the Hilton, the play down the sideline with Jalen Ramsey. Yeah, but, you know, regardless, they should have picked that one up. They should have never thrown that flag. By the way, that kid, that linebacker for the Bengals, I'm going to say this. The Bengals win that game. You can make a pretty compelling argument that he was MVP of the game.
I totally agree, and I agree with your thoughts on the call. I thought it was a home cooking. And if you're a conspiracy theorist on the NFL, all that did was put gasoline on your fire in your argument, because it looked like maybe regular season it might have been called, but not that point in the Super Bowl, Coach.
Well, the bottom line is there was a lot of fouls that weren't called. That's just it. And you could look at 3 or 4 of those flags at the end and say they were the correct call. But because of the other things not being called, that's why the home cooking and all those different things are being said. The bottom line was that was a foul. It just was. You can't put your arm around the back of him. And there was a lot of the pulling of the undershirts throughout the game that never got called. But that one, it was. And then for Cooper Kupp to score 2 touchdowns because he was held on the first touchdown, it was offsetting penalties. So should have been called? Probably not. But at that point of the game, it was the right call in the moment, just not for the capacity of the game.
It was a makeup call, I think, in my opinion. For that call, that non-call on the face mask on Ramsey was egregious. Got literally thrown to the ground, the turn of the helmet. And I think they had that in the back of their mind. And they finally got an opportunity at least to give Stafford a couple more shots at it, and they gave it to him. But in the context of that game, that should not have been called because nothing was. But it was. So
let's go around real quickly. We keep this brief. Who wins the Super Bowl next year? I'm saying the Tennessee Titans.
Titans, listen, I thought the Titans had a real shot this year. I thought the Colts, by the way, should have been in the playoffs and done really well. But I'm going to take a flyer here, and I'm going to say the Bills are going to figure it out. I thought they were a couple plays away this year. I think next year they figure it out.
Coach?
The schedule is everything right now because that 1 seed is so important. Normally, not this year it wasn't. I'm going to go with the Chiefs because I think they're going to figure things out, and they were embarrassed by not holding on to a 21-3 lead over the Bengals. I'm going to go Chiefs, win it next year.
Danny?
I'm on the Bills at 7-1. And I will say, though, this trend of home team, home stadium, I mean, you got to think about Arizona as a flyer out there. I mean, that team is still coming together. And let's not forget, Hopkins went out. I mean, that guy is as good a receiver as anyone, and they're going to be at home potentially for the Super Bowl. And so, I don't know, trend is your friend. I throw a little bit on Arizona, but I like the Bills at 7-1. Coach, what are the odds on Arizona?
I know you want to move on real quick, Ed, but real quick, Coach, in terms of Arizona, now I'm starting to hear the Kyler Murray, he's sort of persona non gratis out there, like there's some falling out. Is there any truth to that?
There 100% is, and this is a lot of the stuff that you hear when you're in Madden, work with the NFL. You know, he's always been a guy who has been elevated. Remember, he was drafted first or second round in an MLB draft. So he's always been on both sports. He doesn't handle losing well. He doesn't handle, when you watch him play, if something bad happens, he doesn't go over to anybody. So I believe all of that is true. even though he came out and goes, nonsense is not what I'm about. It is what he's about. And that's why they're not willing to pay him the $50 million a year he's asking for.
He's not
and
worth
that's
it.
ridiculous.
He's not.
No, he wouldn't. He maybe 30 because the going rate is 40.
At the very least, he's trying to create John Elway leverage, right? Where I'm going to go play baseball, and he's deleted all of his Cardinals whatever on his Twitter account, and I'm going to go play baseball. You know what? Go play baseball.
Go ahead.
Try to get the same money you can get in football.
I'm not comparing him to Aaron Rodgers at all, and I'm not a huge Murray fan, but they're 25-1 right now. So I feel like that's partially embedded in that. If they get him right in the right mindset, maybe that changes. But I mean, without him, they have no chance because I don't know who's going to come and play quarterback unless Rodgers goes to Arizona or something.
Or Rodgers goes to the Titans for Ned's pick.
Interesting.
A lot of history there. Probably won't happen. Maybe to the Broncos, but we need to move on because I'm going to end up losing some money in the markets here if we don't get to the market talk. And I promise you, we're going to help you save some cash or maybe even make a little bit of money. Before we do, though, I have to talk about what happened at the WM Phoenix Open. I don't know if you saw the ace that was made. There were two aces made over the weekend, the 25th anniversary, by the way, of Tiger Woods and his raise the roof hole-in-one out at the 16th. Coach, I'm sure you saw this, Guy and Danny. I don't know if you caught any of the footage, but have you ever seen beers just rain down on a green like that, Coach?
I haven't. It was awesome. It was awesome. And I also love all I hate the conservative people on social media too. That's a guy. That's the way it should be moving forward. That's what entertainment is. And I don't know why anybody has a problem with it.
Not at every tournament, though. Like, that's so specific.
No. I'm saying entertainment-wise, though, is the people, it's once a year and they're complaining about it. That's my point, is it's only once a year. But there's other ways of leaning into the entertainment side of golf. You don't have to do that, but that was amazing. But I did not need to see Harry Higgs at any point take his shirt off. Did not need to see that.
Joel Damon joined the party.
At least Joel is kind of in shape. Harry Higgs is like a cartoon character.
I will say for a hole-in-one, I think you can throw beers. But when they started to throw stuff just for a birdie or Justin Thomas's chip in, that got a little bit out of control. It slows it down a little bit. I think there's a point. But I've been out to that tournament a few times, and you know what you're getting into. And Tiger, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, stopped playing in it years ago because even though he was part of that 1997 hole-in-one, he did not like all that going on, if I remember correctly.
A lot of players did, but now we're seeing the top players come back to the tournament. You saw last week, all of them were there. Rahm, Cantlay, JT, Spieth, Hideki. They all love this tournament now.
Big purse, $1.4 million went to Scotty Scheffler, who collected his first PGA Tour win and a playoff over Patrick Cantlay. Both missed some makeable putts, had opportunities to win. It was Scheffler who collected the big payday. Quickly, because we're going to get to the markets here. Again, this show was born out of selfish necessity on my end to talk about some sports, gambling, a little bit of real estate, but really the markets. And that's how I slid into your DMs, Guy. It always kind of grosses me out.
The way you said it really grosses me out.
Totally. That's Dan Nathan's fault, by the way. When you're looking ahead to Riviera, these are just broad strokes on what it takes to win at Riviera. Look at the last few winners: Homa, Adam Scott, JB Holmes, Bubba Watson, Dustin Johnson. These are long hitters. All right. It sits down in a bowl, kind of in a canyon. It gets cold. The ball doesn't go anywhere. So pick somebody who is above average, really even in the top 10 off of the tee. It's extremely difficult to make putts on these greens. A lot of slope, Poana, and then, of course, that kikuyu grass that surrounds the greens. So when you look at putting, Bubba Watson is certainly not on the top of your mind. Neither is JB Holmes. Certainly not Adam Scott. So you don't have to have somebody who is a magnificent putter. What you have to have is somebody who hits it a long way and hits it high. Those are things that all of those past winners in the past kind of 5 or 6 years have done. So, Coach, again, I'm not giving a specific player. If you want to, go ahead. I'm just giving you the two characteristics that I think you need to pick when you're looking for a player this week to win, or when you're looking at head-to-head battles. Somebody who hits it long and somebody who hits it high.
Two great pieces of advice I have for everybody watching Breaking Even at home right now, or listening on Apple or listening on Spotify, wherever you're containing this content. So there is a correlation between the Masters and Riviera. 3 of the names that you just said: Bubba, DJ, Adam Scott. What do they have in common? They're all Masters champions, because you have to do the same thing there that you've got to do at Riviera. For me, I never bet on a player that's less than 20-1, plus 2,000, because it's too hard. The players are too good to bet on a guy who's plus 800, which is what John Rahm is this week. There are 6 players that are south of 20-1. Don't touch them. there's no value there. You're just, even if you win, which is very hard to do, you're not going to win enough to make it worth the risk of losing said bet. I love Sam Burns to win this week. He's plus 3,000 or 30 to 1. And he finished third here a year ago when Homa and Finau went to a playoff. I like Tony Finau at plus 400 for a top 10 finish. And then a little sleeper for you. Luke List, who won just a couple of weeks ago. I was there in attendance. He is plus 7,000 or 70 to 1 to win this week. And you're going to give me a guy who won just a couple of weeks ago in form at 70 to 1? I'll sprinkle a little bit.
Guess what he does? He hits it long. He hits it high. He struggles on the greens at times, but he just won on all this kind of similar grasses. I like that pick, Luke List. Plus, he's a Vanderbilt Commodore. How could you not like this guy? All right, I promised the markets, and I emailed Danny and Guy. Again, it's completely selfish. I'm not hiding behind the fact that this is absolutely 100% selfish. And you both have been talking about these fixed income ETFs. And Danny, your spidey senses have been tingling for a little while about the problems with these things. And Coach, just so you know the background, my financial guy just deployed some cash into the IRA. And I asked him, hey, well, did you put any money into the fixed income ETFs? And he said, yeah, about 20% of it went into this stuff. And all of a sudden, my antennas are going up. So again, selfish on my end, but I have to think I'm not the only one who is in these products, who's in this age demographic, who's kind of thinking about the future, who's not looking to lose, but would like to make. So what do I do here, Guy and Danny, with these fixed income ETFs?
That's Danny's world, Ned. But listen, I think what's wonderful about that is if you think about it, a year ago, you wouldn't even known to ask that question. And now here we are. And that's at least a question you're having and pushing back on somebody that historically has never gotten that question asked. So if we've done nothing else, it's just we've sort of taken people up the learning curve, Danny.
Yeah, I mean, listen, there's different kinds of fixed income ETFs, so I don't know what he's put you in. But in general, I mean, flows are not your friend. And I think these passive ETFs, and just to reiterate for everyone listening out there, I mean, fixed income, I don't think was ever envisioned. It was meant to own individual bonds, whether it's muni bonds or corporate bonds. I don't think it was ever envisioned to be packaged into an ETF. And the problem with that is that because these ETFs hold, let's say, 50 to 70 different type names, money comes in, it all buys, stuff accordingly. And normally they buys an equal amount of each, et cetera. What happens is, because there's different types of bonds that are rated differently within these ETFs, normally when the Fed starts raising rates and spreads widen, fixed income credit spreads widen, just leave it at that, you're gonna the good stuff's gonna rise to the top and the bad stuff becomes unsellable. So what happens naturally is that I believe these things are misconstructed, because effectively you're gonna overown the best names and be stuck with these crappy names. And so as flows come in and out, you only can sell what you can, which means you end up selling the best name. So I go back to, again, I know no one's sophisticated, or many people are not sophisticated enough. Like back in the 80s and 70s, people were buying individual bonds from their brokers. That's just not how brokers get paid anymore. Brokers are paid a fee now to manage your money. They're not charging commission on many things. And if you go back to just see how people get paid, you can figure out what you're going to be pointed towards an investment. So that means SPY as an ETF, XHP if you want to own the builders, XLE if you want to own energy. That's just the nature of the beast. So a retail client like yourself, Ned, when you say I want to do XYZ, I don't think these brokers are sophisticated enough or truly understand. And they believe, I'll leave it at this, that it's, quote, safe to be in an ETF because it's diversified. I'll end with this. The flows are coming out of fixed income now. The one bond that I believe is going to be a buy is the 10-year bond, which means the yields will go lower over time. Is it time yet? Maybe not. But anywhere above kind of, these levels, 210, 215, 220, I would say to my broker, where can I start buying 10-year yields? Because I believe that that's an economic, equation also, that the economy will slow. It will be a flight to quality, and it will be in that 10-year bond. I think that Guy agrees with me on that, but I think it's stock specific and it's bond specific, and I just don't. Yeah. Sorry, Danny. It's interesting that Danny brings that up, Ned, is because what you're seeing is obviously 10-year yields have skyrocketed, right? And as we're doing this, they're either side of 2%, deservedly so. But what Danny is saying, that if the economy were to slow, like I think a lot of us think that it may, on the back of a number of different factors, the market might sell off. And if you do see a precipitous sell off in the broader market, which we all sort of are anticipating or have been,
you're going to see a flight to quality in the form of treasury bonds, specifically what Danny just mentioned, which means yields will go lower. So somewhat counterintuitive, but there's a scenario where front end of the curve, the short duration bonds continue to go higher in yield, and this 10-year goes lower, the curve flattens. So I'm with Danny on this one. I'm not trying to make people's eyes glaze over, but if they're looking for an instrument to possibly buy to play that, it would come in the form of the TLT, Ned.
Well, that's interesting. And I guess from the fixed income ETF, you all not knowing exactly what it is, although I did email you. So check your emails. Again, selfish. I don't know whether to sell them or to hold on to them, because you got me spooked, right? In the sense of, if last time Danny started talking like this, it was talking about the car market and the used car market specifically, and he shorted Carvana, and the thing just absolutely poofed and just got crushed. And so I'm worried about, hey, this is money that I've set aside that's going to get hammered, and it's going to take years for it to get back, especially if we start to see this market sell-off that you're calling for.
Well, listen, everything is crafted upon lower rates. Everything in this market for the last 14 years has been geared towards lower rates. It's been geared toward quantitative easing. It's been to the Fed, monetizing debt and out there buying treasuries and keeping rates artificially low. Normalized rates should already be at 5 or 6% on the 10-year. I don't think we're ever going to get there, because I believe that the economy can't sustain those type of rates to pay the obligations which they have both on the federal and on the corporate level, right? But used cars is the same problem. It's all tied into financing. What does it cost to finance anything? I don't care if it's a car, if it's a dishwasher, or a home, whatever it is, it's going up. And that to me is going to be what is going to be the drag on the economy. And that to me is why I believe the economy will end up slowing dramatically, because we haven't had to deal with kind of runaway rates, at least on the short end, for quite some time. So just the cost of everything is going up. And when you throw in oil prices going up onto that, right? And taxes only have one direction to go, because we have to fund this $30 trillion debt load that we have. So again, I don't want to get overly bearish and get away from what the core of what you're asking is here, but I'm not excited. I go back to what I talked about at the beginning of the year. I like dividend paying blue chip stocks that pay north dividends of what you can get on the 10-year yield, right? Stocks that may come down in value, but have a very good cash flow or very good setup on the balance sheet. And Ned, it doesn't take but one bad move in a fixed income ETF to wipe out 6 to 7 years of potential coupons that you were going to receive. And then you're really stuck in a situation where, it'll take a long time to get that back. So I'm an opportunity cost guy, and meaning person, not guy, Adami. I'm not, where if I can take my money out of something and think I can get a higher return on it, I don't care what I bought it for. I'll sell it for a loss, because all you're doing is compounding and making a situation worse when you keep something because you're not, quote, even. That's like, as Coach will know, that's betting the Hawaii game. That Hawaii University exists for one thing, those home games, and that's the chase bet. That's the chase bet. What's the one thing left on the freaking board that the make call? That's Hawaii. And that's when you start chasing, and you lose that bet 9 times out of 10. I know Coach agrees on that, but anyway.
100%. 100%.
Yeah. So yes, that's what you're doing. You're betting on Hawaii right now if you stay in that thing, because it ain't coming back, Ned. And so I like the dogs of the Dow ETFs. There's a few out there. I'll share them with you, but it yields 3.5%. And those are good quality companies. And yeah, the stocks might get hit 10, 15%, but that's a 3-year payback of good companies that are structurally sound. You'll get that back in a period of 3 to 4 years. So more than you wanted as an answer.
No, I'll look into that. No, it's never more than I want to know. That's the point of the show, is I got to be educated on this stuff. Before we go, Guy, I want to ask you on the commodity side, we're talking about a bigger sell-off. Oil peaked out 95, kind of kicked back. Maybe it's going to make a run. I'm also interested in housing. I mean, lumber has done the same thing. Will we see housing prices potentially, along with oil prices, retreat and then explode higher?
It's interesting. I mean, let's go one by one. In terms of energy, yes, as we're doing this, you've seen a little bit of a pullback in the energy market, but so much of it now is based on whatever rhetoric you hear coming out of Russia, specifically Vladimir Putin. And he's playing this thing like a Stradivarius, quite frankly. And I think there are many more chapters in this book to be written. And I do think oil continues the trajectory higher, albeit with these little pullbacks. Jeff Curry, who's a Goldman Sachs commodities expert, I mean, he said, and I'm paraphrasing, in his 30-odd years, he's never seen anything like it. Again, paraphrasing, he said, we're running out of everything. And in terms of commodities and inflation, That's great for prices, and that just means inflation is stickier than a lot of people thought. In terms of lumber, I mean, the round turns we've seen in lumber prices over the last 2 years have been historic in a word, and I think they will continue. Housing prices at a certain point are going to run into the problem. As Danny just mentioned it, everything is contingent upon rates. And when rates are zero, affordability is obviously top of mind, and everybody can afford. As rates start to go higher, that becomes a little more problematic. I will tell you, though, OIH we've talked about now for a number of times. We said 240 is your pivot level. Buy it on a close above. Friday, you saw a big move through it to the upside, pulled back. As we're sitting here right now, 240. I'm pretty convinced that OIH is going to continue to grind higher for the rest of the year, Ned.
There you have it. Danny, any
can
final
I just
thoughts?
Add something?
Yeah, please.
Can I just add something to that that I think is really critical for listeners to understand. This Russia-Ukraine conflict has been going on since 2014. Granted, in the last 4 weeks, it's gotten very heightened and all that stuff. This market already had issues before this elevation, right? We had inflation that was already in motion. All these things we're talking about, I get it. Get a relief rally. And by the way, oil going lower is a positive for the markets, overall markets, because it is a tax on the consumer. But let's not kid ourselves. All the issues we're still facing outside of this Russia-Ukraine are still here. So don't let people get caught up in this relief rally and believe that, quote, things are better. If anything, I would argue that inflation can now move on its way on its path, that this Russia-Ukraine thing is actually going to devolve, or I should say undo itself a little bit. And therefore, so good, less supply chain issues. Good. Now what? Guess what? More inflation. So anyway, I just think that people get caught on a day-to-day basis and focus just on the micro, and I still take a step back, and I think there's still issues. So
we got about a minute or two minutes left. So is cash a position then? Because I'm basically now saying I'm going to go buy puts on everything. Coach, what are you going to do? Everything's higher. The rates are going higher. Inflation. What are we supposed to do? Where do we put our money?
Puts, not puts.
What are we going to do, guy?
Well, when we say cash is an option, when people hear that, they immediately jump to the conclusion that Danny and I are telling people to get all in cash, which is not what we're doing. But what we've been trying to do now for a while, Ned and Coach, is to show people some of the things that have been going on under the surface that they should be focused on. And a lot of those things are coming to fruition now. So to Danny's point, I do think some of these blue chip stocks have been out of favor in an environment where people were running for high valuation, high growth stocks because they only went higher. I think will be coming in favor now. So I think he's right. What basically has happened over the last 2 years, again, in my opinion, is an anomaly. And I think people will come back to some semblance of reality as rates start to move higher, as the economy starts to slow, and they find terra firma in the form of names that have literally been out of favor for the last 2 years.
You know what we should do, Coach? You should take this money. I'm going to cost Danny some money here because this show is about education, right? Education on whether it's sports gambling, whether it's real estate, whether it's golf, whether it's just all sports, and whether it's the markets. And in an effort to help Coach get educated and help me get educated, we should take the $200 that you own, Danny Moses, and you should start a little TD Ameritrade account with it or something like that, and using the thoughts and get yourself to do some research.
Okay.
And then you can see what we do at the end of the year. And in the end of the year, you either give Danny his $200 and plus some interest, or maybe there's something else on the side. Danny, what do you think?
Are you cool with me doing that?
You just want the smell of that money in your wallet.
I would rather pay Coach $200 to have access to him for his research on his bets that he's making, because he does the work. I mean, he does exactly what we do in the stock market. You want to find an inefficiency and exploit it. Are you always going to be right? No, but it doesn't mean it wasn't a good bet, but you can lose. So listen, Coach, we're going to have a long-term relationship. I'm going to be probably throwing you $2,000 on some dumb bet soon, I'm sure. But no, I think what you're doing in your world and what we're doing, I think that's a powerful,
Wait, this is going to be an amazing show. I'm going to pay Danny his money because I don't want to owe him one dime. And I'm going to start the Ameritrade on my own and listen to everything you guys teach us here on the show. And we're going to see how it plays out. And actually, I think that'll be a fun experiment.
It's a great idea. Let's do $1,000. I'll take $1,000 in the gambling account. You take $1,000 in a stock account. Let's check back who can earn the most over a period of time. And the winner gets X amount. I think it's a win-win. So
I love it.
All right, we'll figure it out during the week, and when we come back for next week's show, we'll have it all ironed out. But as they say in Vegas, man, the dealer's done. We're out of here. We're out of time. Make sure you follow everybody on Twitter. Make sure you go to the Risk Reversal YouTube page. Watch the show. Spread the word. Guy Adami, Danny Moses, Coach. Appreciate y'all.
Peace.
See you next week.